So I have reviewed, I've complained, you guys have listened, you've responded, and I in turn have listened to your responses. And now we come back to this video. Once and for all, we get to decide ultimately which one is the better daily trainer. Is it the Nike Invincible Run 3 or is it the Adidas Adizero Boston 11? Let's compare and contrast and let's talk about it. So before we get into the video, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're already subscribed watching this content. Thanks so much, love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of updates. Without further ado, let's begin. Specs for both shoes right here in their respective locations. And yeah, I guess we're going to kick off with the older of the two shoes, which to my understanding is the Adidas Boston 11. So, first of all, you're probably wondering about this comparison video. Like, these are two completely different animals of shoes. However, in terms of their respective brands, they find themselves in very similar spots. And that's why I think we need to compare them. And what I mean by this is they are similar in a sense to being the Robin to their Batmans, you know? They're the daily speed racer trainer to the race day shoe that they kind of line themselves up with. So in this particular case, we can make the argument that the Invincible Run 3 has similar enough specs to something like the Vaporfly Next Percent and almost like the Alphafly 1, where this shoe can complement them on that daily training basis. Whereas the Adizero Boston 11, I think, has more complements to, is it the Adios 1? And then I think there's another one. Is it the Prime X? Those are the Adidas race day shoes that this shoe kind of ends up being the daily race trainer for. So anyways, let's get into it, right? This one, the Adidas Boston 11 in my size, weighs about 10 ounces, close to like 280, 290 grams on average, with a stack height of 40 millimeters in the heel and about 31 and a half, I believe, in the forefoot, giving it about 8.5 millimeter offset in terms of the stack height. So respectively, kind of a high stack shoe as it is, with some fun stuff, right? We've got, of course, the Light Strike foam going all the way across the shoe at the top here, which is like the ZoomX comparison. It's a softer foam that gives you more of that kind of snappy feel in terms of a ride. And then there is a plastic plate, carbon plate, I guess, that's you can see right here. It's kind of like showing these like little lines in the shoe. It has kind of like a skeletal structure in the foot, and basically that's going to be your carbon plate alternative. That's going to give you some additional snap with the Light Strike Pro foam. And then we also have like this Light Strike heavier composite foam in the bottom of the shoe, which is supposed to be more resemblant of your React foam, giving you more of a response and more durability and rigidity when, you know, running on the ground. And then of course we got this like Continental style foam or Continental branded foam on the shoe that kind of has its two, I guess I'm gonna call them husks, kind of going across. We got this one black piece right here, we got the yellow stripe here, and then we have the two stripes here respectively for your heel and your forefoot. And as we get into the 50-mile plus review, we'll kind of go over some of the things I'm seeing here at this time, so we'll give you a closer up on that. But anyways, yeah, that's what's going on with the bottom of the shoe. Inside the shoe, we do have a slightly gusseted tongue, but we also have this inner socking layer inside the shoe just to give you a more streamlined feel when you tie the shoe and go for your run. So yeah, right off the rip, very fast shoe overall. Not too much to complain about at this time with it, but again, we'll get into the Invincible Run 3 now, which is our, I guess, slightly newer of the two shoes. Now, I've reviewed this shoe a couple of times on the channel before, but again, this shoe weighs at about 10.8 ounces, giving it about 310 grams on average. We have a heel of about 40 millimeters and a forefoot of about 31, giving it a 9 millimeter offset. So the stack heights and the weights quite similar between both shoes, with some small subtle differences in terms of technology and usage overall, but we'll get into that in a minute here. So again, this shoe is just using one foam composite all the way across. That's our ZoomX, as you can clearly see. And it follows more of a rounded shape to give you some stabilization to an unstable but very snappy foam, as you can probably tell, because ZoomX is just used across the shoes like the Vaporfly, the Alphafly in terms of your race day shoes and whatnot. And then as we see in the upper, we do have this meshed upper kind of a little bit wider in the forefoot area to give you some more spacing. It gives it more of a comfort feel rather than like this streamlined speed type of vibe that the Boston 11 is giving us. There isn't any socking layers on the inside of this shoe because, again, it's built more for comfort in your speed run rather than being this streamlined powerhouse of a shoe that is something more like, you know, your Tempo Next Percent, your Boston 11, your Magic Speed from Asics. That's kind of the other things we would compare them to ultimately. So yeah, non-gusseted tongue, as you can see. It just, again, the shoe's built for speed and comfort, and that's what the Invincible is really trying to aim for here. And at the bottom of the shoes, as you can see, we just got this rubber composite following this particular shape with some lugs for some grip during other conditions, like whether it be gravel, rain. If you're running in snow, that could be also what it's used for. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at in terms of the overall specs of the shoe. But now let's go into comparing and contrasting both of these shoes respectively. So I think we got to go whip them up like this. Yeah, there we go. Kind of like this. So in terms of buying these shoes, there's a couple of things to consider here. The answer is not as obvious as I would like to make it, but with all my complaining about the Invincible and then jumping into this Boston 11, my transition between this shoe into this shoe really does feel like a success. But there's a couple things to consider before you decide making a similar jump to me, right? I'm kind of giving you the obvious answer of which shoe of these two I really like. It's obviously going to be the Boston 11. Couple things to consider, right? One, this is a carbon plate shoe, so already this one is going to be put miles ahead in terms of speed against the Invincible Run 3. Now, the consequence of the carbon plate or your plastic skeletal plate that Adidas is using for this shoe is that there's a stiffness that comes with the shoe as a result. Like, it's gonna, the ride is gonna feel extraordinarily streamlined because it's just super tight with your foot. You're locked in nice and well with this inner sock. The build of the shoe is just built for that tightness overall. But you got to consider the fact that the shoe is stiff because of the carbon plate, and it's not nearly as rounded as something like the Invincible Run 3. So you're sacrificing your comfort for speed in this particular shoe overall. Another thing to consider is that this is one of the few shoes at this point in time that I've ever experienced blisters in. I'm feeling it particularly along this Adi Zero line, and it's not as a result of the shoe necessarily, it's more of the conditions of which I've been running in this shoe. So I only get blisters when I run in a drier, less humid conditions, and I spent the last week at a conference in Orange County, California, which is basically a drier climate than like the Midwest and like the Chicagoland area. So as you can tell, my feet and like my hands were dry for a really long time out there, and as a result of running and having like, you know, calluses forming in certain areas, I do have like this weird blister just right along this Adi Zero insignia on this point of the shoe. So blisters was never a concern in the Invincible Run 3. It should be a concern for you in this particular shoe depending on where you're running with it. That's just kind of where I'm going to leave that as is for now, as we're like almost 50 miles deep into this particular shoe. Now, when it comes to the Invincible Run 3, no carbon plate means you're not going to be experiencing as much stiffness as something with, but there's a couple of issues here as well with the Invincible Run Flyknit 3. One is that it's going to lack stability like at a high level because A, it's ZoomX foam, it's designed to be fast and snappy, not necessarily responsive and rigid in that sort of case. And as a result, the shoe has a radius in the front of it, which, you know, kind of rolls in certain directions. So it's designed to basically take the impact of your natural foot strike in the shoe and just be able to snap in that sort of direction. So it's not really a corrective shoe. It's more of just an adaptive type of shoe while you're running with it. So something to consider. So if you have like bad habits like I do in my right foot, where it tends to supinate just a bit and then I kind of have this forefoot strike to it, you're going to have these wear patterns as they are on the shoe right now. So it's not the worst thing to happen. It's just something to consider that the shoe will overemphasize any sort of bad habits you have while you're running, but it is an overall comfortable, fast ride. Because like my average pace in the shoe on like an easy to slightly pushed kind of day will range from about 7:30 to 7:15 minute per mile, whereas in the Adidas Boston 11, the shoe is going to push me closer to like 6:55 to 6:50 on like that easy to slightly pushed kind of run where my heart rate is a little bit over 150. Not quite like tempo-ish pace, but like just a little bit over. And that's a result of the carbon plate giving you that extra 15 to 20 seconds per mile, plus that streamline effect of just being in like a similar feel in both shoes in terms of your pace. So that's kind of where I'm going to leave that, I think, overall for now. Again, two completely different animals, but at this point, you should also consider the Boston 11 in this particular case for the fact that you can get this shoe. Somebody mentioned in my comment sections they got it for like $40 at like their local Ross store. I got this for about like $70, $80 from a running store. I think it was called the Marathon store. I don't know where if I have this card now, but they wrote me like a personalized note basically for this shoe. There we go. It's called Marathon Sports. And they were just telling me that whoever packed this shoe for me basically ran their half marathon PR in this particular shoe, which is both impressive and respectable and also admirable. And it's kind of cute that they sent me this card. So yeah, it's kind of another emphasis on the fact that this is a pretty decent everyday racer kind of shoe if you can use it for your half marathon and PR in it. Whereas the Invincible, you don't hear too much about it being your race day shoe because there are better alternatives to that. So at this point in time, you probably know my answer. I would definitely recommend between these two, the Boston 11 over the Invincible Run 3 at this particular point in time. 150 plus miles in, just under 50 at the filming of this video. So if you agree or disagree with the assessment, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, yeah, more reviews to come. We're going to get to 50 plus miles in this because I have some interesting things to say about this shoe as I see from the outsole impact zones overall. So thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.